everyone, welcome to this video, and this is a 47-minute long tuning with audio commentary of my knowledge and what it's like to be a shortwave teenager today, while doing a shortwave Bandscan and DXing run on October 10th, 2025. I started at around 01:18 or 19 UTC and ended at around 02:45 UTC. That was here in northern Colorado, USA, with my Seela D808 with the telescopic antenna outside to get away from the noise. There was a lot of good signals and some interval signals and things. The local time here for that was around 7:19-18 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. and it was completely dark outside, and it was lovely, cloudy, pretty good temperature. But here's the audio commentary of all these stations I received. I started at the 90-meter band and went all the way up to the end of the 16-meter band. I scanned the 13 and 11-meter bands, but I did not receive anything. But here are my catches from last night. I am tuned to the CHU Canada time signal on 3.330 megahertz in the 90-meter band. It is 01:19 UTC. So I heard the ID there. It comes from Ottawa, Canada, with 3 kilowatts of power. I'm tuned to WWCR in Nashville, Tennessee. They're using 100 kilowatts of power on 4.84 megahertz, 4.840 megahertz. It's 01:22 UTC, and you may hear this tapping sound in the background. That's interference from my phone.
I was one heartbeat from hell before I was born again. And that's through each and every one of us who has been born again. We were each and every one of us one heartbeat from hell. That last heartbeat for that individual has not been born again.
But when my phone's away from it, even a couple feet, it's still good. Okay. I am tuned to WWV in Fort Collins, Colorado. They're using a 10 kilowatt transmitter on 5 megahertz. And this is a 24/7 frequency to me because they're so close. Usually the nighttime I can hear the atmospheric fading, but in the daytime I don't. And in fact, we'll give you 2.5 megahertz here in a second too, and that's basically 24/7 for me.
At the tone, 1 hour, 26 minutes, coordinated universal time.
And now we're going down to 2.5 megahertz. They're using 2.5 kilowatts of power here. So nice and strong signal. So I want to skip ahead a little bit. It's 01:27 UTC, and I want to skip ahead to 7.305 megahertz in the 41-meter band, because Vatican Radio is doing the interval signal from the transition from Portuguese into Spanish for South America. This is from the Vatican State Transmitter site in Santa Maria di Galleria with 250 kilowatts of power. Not too long ago, they were relayed on the same frequency via Greenville, North Carolina, but when Donald Trump liquidated the USAGM, now Radio Marti's the only person there broadcasting, and so they lost their customers of KBS World Radio in Spanish to South America on 11880, which is now from Extension, and now Vatican Radio is using their Santa Maria di Galleria transmitter. But they have rotatable antennas, so, but here's the interval signal. I love it.
Laudetur Jesus Christus.
Apreciados oyentes de Radio Vaticana y Vatican News, bienvenidos al programa informativo en lengua española. Reciban un cordial saludo de la redacción hispanoamericana y de quien les habla Sebastián Sansón Ferrari. Este jueves 9 de octubre.
So that's not bad for Vatican Radio, coming from the Vatican State transmitter site. And oh man, you could just think of, being a teenage shortwave listener, in the day of digital technology. Being outside right now, it's like cloudy, it's dark outside, and you're hearing the signal coming from Europe. It's amazing to me. It's just so far away, and it's so cool. So it is now 01:32 hours UTC, and we went back down. I didn't get anything else on the 60-meter band, so now we are just below the 49-meter international broadcast band. I'm tuned to WRMI Radio Miami International in Okeechobee, Florida, on 5.8 megahertz.
Foreign Ministry has also described it as an important step towards ending the conflict, easing civilian suffering, and reducing the risk of further attacks. Slovakia supported the 3-point plan from the start and remains committed to the international effort around increase in security in the Middle East. According to reports, Hamas will release all hostages in Gaza, and Israeli forces will withdraw to agree to positions under the first phase of the plan. Europe needs a strong France. This Slovak parliament speaker.
It is now 01:33 hours UTC, and I'm tuned to WRMI Radio Miami International on 5.85 megahertz, and this one is stronger.
And there can be no justice if Palestine is not free. Palestinians will never abandon their homeland or their rights, he said. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas claimed that the PA is prepared to renounce terrorism and make peace with Israel in his address to the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, on Thursday.
And again, it's much stronger than it is. It's just the noise ticking sound from my phone. It is 01:34 UTC, and I'm tuned to our favorite deceased preacher on the shortwave radio bands. Everybody on shortwave knows this dude. It's Brother Stare, and he's on WWCR, Nashville, Tennessee, with a 100 kilowatt transmitter. Should have mentioned the WRMI 5.8 and 5.85 megahertz ones are also 100 kilowatt signals. But this is WWCR on 5.920 megahertz.
Thomas, who is a widely recognized radio and television commentator, was once the vice president of the Jerry Falwell's moral majority. Thomas did an excellent job in reviewing the major incidents that have led up to the current turmoil. He said it was a mistake to give up land without reciprocity. It was a mistake.
It is 01:36 UTC, and we have WWCR on 5.935 megahertz. This is the University Network, using another 100 kilowatt transmitter.
In verse 9, easier to read like this. It actually appears like this in verse 9. There we go. This is what it looks like in verse 9. We were talking about his, so we've got the vav and the holim. We've got his strength, his Uzi, okay? The enemies are the ones that are lying in wait.
It is 01:37 UTC, and I'm tuned to WRMI on 5.95 megahertz in the 49-meter band. They're using a 100 kilowatt transmitter in Okeechobee, Florida.
So 7 companies are up between 3 and 4%. The other 493 are down 10%. There are no upward revisions for those 493 companies. Pretty much.
It's 01:38 UTC, and I have a really, really weak signal from HCJB in Quito, Ecuador, on 6.050 megahertz, a 1 kilowatt transmitter. the final remnant of what used to be the once almighty powerful HCJB that used to be heard way regularly, but here's the very faint signal of them. So they're just barely coming in. It is 0140 hours UTC. I'm tuned to 6.070 megahertz. That's CFRX, which is the shortwave repeater of CFRB 1010 AM in Toronto. But this is CFRX using 900 watts of power, I think, according to the technician or the QSL manager of CFRX, CFRB. Coming from Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. I'm tuned to 6.185 megahertz at 0142 UTC, and this is XEPPM Radio Education. Or why did I say that with a kind of a French tone to it? Education in Mexico City, Mexico. Using about 1 kilowatt of power. Kind of hard to hear there, but they are playing some Spanish music. It's 0145 UTC. I'm tuned to 7.490 megahertz, the 41 meter band. This is WBCQ in Monticello, Maine, using a 50 kilowatt transmitter.
Huge juggernauts like Wells Fargo Bank and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and Bank of America. Their job is to protect the consumer from those juggernauts, to go after them, and if necessary, to smash them into pieces. But they came after my...
It's 0146 UTC. I'm tuned to 7.505 megahertz on the 41 meter band, excuse me. And this is WRNO in New Orleans, Louisiana, USA, with using a 50 kilowatt transmitter.
He's the bold prophet, he's the compassionate healer, he's the bondage breaker, he's the perfect example. He's the atoning sacrifice. The atoning sacrifice. John talks about this in 1 John 4, where it says, "This is love."
It's 0146 UTC, and I'm tuned to 7.520 megahertz in the 41 meter band. This is WWCR, Nashville, Tennessee, USA, using a 100 kilowatt transmitter.
Its use as a time-sharing or other shared ownership arrangement or agreement that requires her either to rent the property or give any other person control or occupancy of the property. 7.
It's 0149 UTC. I'm tuned to 7.850 megahertz, and this is CHU in Ottawa, Ontario, and Canada. And they're using a 5 kilowatt transmitter. So unfortunately I had to hold my phone away from that because it's making the clickety-clackety sound. So I'm going to cover all these stations real quick. This is on 9.265 megahertz at 0149 UTC. This is WINB in Red Lion, Pennsylvania, USA, using a 50 kilowatt transmitter.
Because Genesis 6 says,
when God spoke to Abraham, he said, I will bless them that bless thee. I will curse them that curse thee. Let me say this to America, all of America.
There are landslides, while the Alps in Europe have avalanches.
This is World's Last Crap, as official SWL calls it. This is but it's World Last Chance on WBCQ, Monticello, Maine, USA, using a 250 kilowatt transmitter on 9.330 megahertz.
Kerala in nearly 100 years. Almost 500 people lost their lives, and approximately 800,000 people were displaced.
Yourself, the emotion, for example, to wish for something, are not separate from the petition. If you wish in your lifetime for things, did you will discover something like that there is other intelligent life in the universe, and that the human...
That's WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida, USA, using a 100 kilowatt transmitter on 9.395 megahertz. It's 0151 UTC. I'm tuned to 9.455 megahertz on the 31 meter band, and this is WRMI in Okeechobee, Florida, USA, using a 100 kilowatt shortwave transmitter.
Images are mortgage documents that are in the public record. It appears they have Letitia James dead to rights. It appears they caught her red-handed. Well, naturally, she's screaming, this is a politically motivated...
It's 0153 UTC. I'm tuned to 9.665 megahertz on the 31 meter band, and this is Radio Brasil Central in Brazil. Or not Radio Brasil Central, Radio Voz Missionaria, and I think they're using a 7.5 kilowatt transmitter. But either way, it's good DX, and I sent them a reception report via email once, and they did not reply back, unfortunately. It's 0155 UTC. We're coming up close to 02 hours UTC, so we're going to start pivoting around the bands for a little until past that. I'm tuned to 9.870 megahertz, and I have the Voice of Turkey interval signal in 31 meter band. They're transmitting from Emiler in Turkey, with a 500 kilowatt transmitter. One station I want to catch before they sign off at 02 UTC. This is their 5-minute Spanish broadcast. This is the Radio Nacional Amazonia, broadcasting from Brazil on 11.780 megahertz in the 25 meter band, transmitting from the with a 250 kilowatt shortwave transmitter.
Allí se realizan los debates y las plenarias, donde los delegados y los países discuten, negocian acuerdos y toman decisiones. La zona azul también alberga los pabellones de los países, donde cada uno mueve.
So here, how this is going to work, coming up here in a minute at 02 UTC, we're going to hear the NHK Radio Japan interval signal, and we're going to hear the sign-on just real quickly. It's going to be on 6.105 megahertz in the 49 meter band, beamed to Central America using the 500 kilowatt transmitter at Edis in France, the Radio France International transmitter site. I don't know if they're reducing it to 250 kilowatts or not, but it's still a strong one. And I just heard the open carrier for what is going to be the World Christian Broadcaster KNLS, which is usually from Alaska, but this is their relay from Madagascar World Voice, MWV, in Mahanga, Madagascar, and they're going to be using a 100 kilowatt transmitter, and this signal always comes in strong. I really like the KNLS instrumental, and we're also going to hear the interval signal and sign-on as well. So that'll be what's going to come up here in a couple minutes. Right now we're just hanging out on 6105, waiting for that sign on. Usually it comes in at around, like, they sign on around, it's 0158 now, so they might sign on at 0159. But we're waiting here until the carrier turns on. And then again, once you hear the beep for NHK, we're going to quickly switch over to 13.760 megahertz in the 22 meter band. And if there is no sign on, we'll just switch to 13.760 megahertz. Yep, that was NHK. Now this is KNLS, 13.760 megahertz via Madagascar.
Thanks for making us a part of your Friday. Broadcasting over the air on KNLS, Anchor Point, Alaska, USA, and via our transmitter in the Indian Ocean region. I'm Lucy Barrett, your host for this hour of the English language broadcasting, bringing you music to learn, news to know, and a message to live. Every week we may take you from Alaska to Asia to Africa to America. My co-host is Rob Spartan, senior producer of English programming.
Thanks, Lucy. The world's largest retailer has been ordered by a U.S. judge to pay $6 million for overcharging customers. Kashi Saibagh has details from a case brought in California. Firefighters in Florida saved an elderly man who suffered a heart attack. And they completed the task that caused the attack. Doug Furley explains on today's news and Good News. Is it okay to ask God why? And do we sometimes fail to see the big picture? Author Tom Thompson ponders these questions as he visits with Paul Ladd. And Paul Taylor has Creation Moment.
And we'll play your favorite songs from today's best music, along with today's profiles in Christian music with Dale Crow, a message from God's Word, and much, much more.
This hour, you'll hear your favorites from Calvin Harris and Clementine Douglas, Lifehouse, Monster Quavo and Lana Del Rey, and Philip Phillips. From his last play, here's Ed Sheeran with Camera.
You can see the way the sun.
So it's the complete intro to KNLS in Alaska. I love that. That's such a catchy tune for a sign-on. It's such a really catchy. It might be one of my favorite sign-ons from a radio station. It is 0204 UTC. I'm tuned to 9.955 megahertz. And this is WRMI, Okeechobee, Florida, on 9.955 megahertz with a 100 kilowatt transmitter. And this is probably the strongest I've ever heard 9955 because it's beamed in the complete opposite direction of me.
Más de 2.150 medios de 120 países usan esta herramienta como punto de comparación.
And that should be Radio Prague International in Spanish. There's an hour later of Radio Prague in English.
De origen prorruso durante la actual campaña electoral en Chequia. El director general de la radio checa, René Saboral.
So not too bad of a signal there. So you'll hear this tone, because I'm in single sideband, and that weak, fluttery tone isn't just something, it's not even a carrier. It's a time signal. And you'll hear it here in a moment. In a couple minutes, we're going to give you the ID at 0209 UTC. And what will that ID be? It'll be in Morse code RWM. And it comes from Taldum in Moscow with a 10 kilowatt transmitter. They're on 4.996 megahertz, 9.996 megahertz, and 14.996 megahertz. And so here's just a sample of what I hear on each frequency. I don't have it in CW Morse code, so I'm just using 4995, but it's 4.996, 9.996, and 14.996 megahertz. So I got nothing on 4.996. That's my signal on 9.996. And 14.996 is my strongest. And it comes from Taldum, which has 250 kilowatt transmitters in there and plenty of antennas built in the Soviet days. It comes from Taldum, Russia. And that used to be a major hub, and also for DRM as well, for Radio Moscow and Voice of Russia and plenty of others. But now it's probably the only active high-power broadcast site still, even though they're using only 10 kilowatts of power. So we're just going to let you listen for a little bit. They're going to go silent at 0208 UTC, and then they'll come back with the Morse code sign-on. And if you go, whoa, and run around, that's because my radio is very sensitive and doesn't like to move in single sideband mode. You can hear the faint sound of a carrier or something there. That's how strong the signal is. Interference from WWV on 15 megahertz with an ionospheric modulation test. 14.996. Let's go back to 9996 and hear that pip sound as well. So that's the RWM Moscow time signal. From what I have also been told, there was also one which came from the transmitter in Irkutsk. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. It was RID, and from what I heard, it was on 10.005 megahertz. If anybody has any information on that, I'd like to know, because I only have found one recording of it ever. But yeah, so I was wondering if my theory was if there was RID in Irkutsk and there's RWM in Taldum or in Moscow, if there were other time signals like in Khabarovsk and things. It is 0211 UTC. I'm tuned to 11.650 megahertz in the 25 meter band, and this is some weak station that I do not know. Really interesting music though. It's 0214 UTC. I'm tuned to 12.050 megahertz in the 25 meter band. And this is WEWN, ETWN Catholic Radio Network in Van Deer, Alabama, USA, with a 100 or 250 kilowatt transmitter. I can't remember. I know the site's capable of 500 kilowatts of power, but they're not using that. Not strong right now, but was strong, but usually stronger a couple hours earlier than when I'm DXing.
Mundial. Bueno, pues un saludo para ti, Bismarck. Espero que todo pues vaya bien para tu equipo de Nicaragua en el juego que va a pasar.
So it's pretty decent. I'm tuned to 12.095 megahertz at 0215 UTC, and this most likely is the BBC, but I don't know from which site, and they're very fluttery. Usually BBC is really hard to get now because their times of frequencies just don't match up, and really hard to hear in North America anymore on shortwave. In fact, the really only good time you can ever hear them now in North America is 12.095 megahertz from 03 to 04 to 05 UTC from Madagascar, the former Radio Netherlands relay station there. And that's about it to Africa, because they've just cut shortwave in English so much. But this might be BBC, because this is 12.095, and this is a regular frequency. One frequency I used to hear them well is during the winter, 23 hours UTC and 0 hours UTC. Actually, it might have been 0 hours UTC. And I heard them well on 9580 and another 25 meter band frequency from the Philippines, the USAGM relay station in Tanong in the Philippines, until all that got cut by Donald Trump and his administration and things. So very weak and fluttery. It's 0217 UTC. I'm tuned to 13.600 megahertz in the 22 meter band, and this is an unidentified station. And what I mean by unidentified is I haven't heard it enough times to have it in my memory to be like, oh yeah, it's this station. It is 0219 UTC, and excuse me there, I'm tuned to 13.740 megahertz in the 22 meter band, and this is an unidentified station that sounds like it's coming from China. And coming up here, I'm going to skip 13.76 megahertz KNLS because I already gave you a sample of that. that's interesting.
CHU, Canada. Coordinated Universal Time. 2 hours, 22 minutes.
2 heures, 22 minutes.
That's right, that's CHU Canada on 14.670 megahertz from Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada, with 3 kilowatts of power. Really strong signal for nighttime on 14.670. I can't remember the last time I heard a good English ID that I've captured, because every time I try to record, the signal always fades out at the right time. And while we're at it, let's get the French ID.
CHU Canada, temps universel coordonné, 2 heures, 23 minutes.
2 hours, 23 minutes.
I'm now tuned to WWV and WWVH in Hawaii, harmonizing together on 15 megahertz. Female voice will be WWVH and male voice will be WWV. WWVH is from Kauai, Hawaii. WWV, Fort Collins, Colorado, USA.
At the time, 2 hours, 24 minutes, coordinated universal time.
At the time, 2 hours, 26 minutes. Coordinated Universal Time.
And that rapping, beeping in the background, that's the RWM time signal in Moscow on 14996. It is 0224 UTC. I'm tuned to NHK Radio Japan in Japanese on 15.195 megahertz in the 19 meter band from the transmitter site in Japan, Yamata, Japan, with 300 kilowatts of power. I think NHK has been using that specific site in Yamata for shortwave since, at least for Japan, transmissions admitted from Japan since World War II, which is pretty cool. And to identify that this is NHK in Japanese, here's 15195, and then we'll switch to 6105 from France. So pretty cool. Same signal from two opposite directions in the world. It's 0227 UTC, and I'm tuned to 15.410 megahertz in the 19 meter band, and this is a unidentified station. It's 0229 UTC. I'm tuned to 15.625 megahertz in the 19 meter band. And this is an unidentified station in Japanese, but it might be NHK Radio Japan. from the Japan transmitter site. Maybe, I don't know for sure. So it might not be NHK Radio Japan because I just switched to 6105 to Thai ID, and it's a completely different program. Or it might be one of the foreign language broadcasts. It's 0233 UTC. I'm tuned to 17.655 megahertz in the 60-meter band. And this is an unidentified station, most likely from China.
சீன தேசிய நிகழ்ச்சியில் சாம்பிள் பகுதியில் இருக்கக்கூடிய தேயிலை விவசாயம் இன்றைய பாரம்பரிய வணிகத்தில் தேயிலையோட முக்கிய பங்கு சீனாவிலிருந்து உலகின் பல்வேறு இடங்களுக்கு இந்த தேயிலை.
It's 0233 UTC. I'm tuned to 17.665 megahertz in the 60-meter band. And this is CNR8, China National Radio 8, Ethnic Minority Radio from China. Can't remember the exact transmitter site, but I think they're using 100 kilowatts of power. I recently just recorded this off the QESDR in California a couple days ago, on October 1st, when Radio New Zealand was off the air, because it was the first Wednesday of the month, so they were doing transmitter maintenance at the time, so I could not listen to them. Cool thing about CNR8 is their music is so exotic, so it's really cool. It's 235 UTC, and I'm tuned to 17.675 megahertz in the 16-meter band, and this is one of my favorite stations. They start booming in at around this time, even earlier in the summer days, but as the winter goes on, and they're usually good until I can hear them all the way until just after a couple hours after sunrise here, because then they'll be on a nighttime frequency which will fade out, and this is Radio New Zealand, transmitting from the transmitter site in Rangitaki, New Zealand, with a 100 kilowatt transmitter, and they're booming in right now, and I love Radio New Zealand. I love their programs and things, but here they are.
It kind of helps solve that challenge that we have in New Zealand, where I think increasingly New Zealanders think that nature's too far away and it's way over in the national park, and this is a great working example of we've got it on our farms, and just look after these places, and you can have this thriving wildlife, and you can have your commercially viable farm. He also said they've got one farm with kiwi up in Northland that they work quite hard on with the community looking after the kiwi. And then I said something like, people just understood.
Gotta look after the kiwi. It's very important. And that concludes this tuning, and thank you so much. I am ending at 0238 UTC. So we've gotten a span of over an hour of DXing, which was quite fun outside, and it's quite dark out here. Lovely out here temperature. And so yeah, this is a tuning here in northern Colorado, USA. And as a teenager, it's quite fun listening to this stuff. So thank you everybody so much. And again, we were tuning the bands. We started sometime around 01 something UTC, early 01 something UTC. I can't remember now, but just as a teenager and hearing all these signals from so far away, it's just amazing hearing this stuff coming so far away with all the digital technology we have. And sometimes it's just nice to sit back and have a radio in your hands and listen to something from so far away without the internet connection or whatever, and hearing the signal fade in and out. And that's what I was just doing right now with Radio New Zealand on 17675. Lots of good DX catches out here tonight. For all those stations that I didn't identify, I will put them in the description of the video, so you can check that out. I'm going to review this myself so I can make sure what frequencies I said were unknowns, and to look those up. And again, thank you all for joining me on this DX session here in northern Colorado, USA, using the Seawooden D808 with the telescopic antenna outside of the house for noise reasons. And it's beautiful out here. And again, thank you all for watching.